Jesse Paxton used to believe family came first. That was before Clay took the gold, left him to hang, and sent a letter that simply read, "Forgive me if you can." Jesse Paxton was a man shaped by the rough lands of the West, where every sunrise brought new challenges. With sun-kissed skin and hands hardened by years of labor, he had a rugged charm that drew people in, but there was a fierceness in his eyes that warned others to tread carefully. Jesse had lived a life of hard work, learning the ways of survival since he was a boy. He was skilled with a rifle, able to hit his mark with uncanny precision, and had an uncanny ability to read the land like an open book. He knew the trails, the rivers, and even the whispers of danger that rolled through the air. Jesse's personality was a mix of determination and loyalty. He had always looked out for his younger brother, Clay, who was more impulsive and reckless. Despite their differences, they made a formidable team. Clay had a silver tongue and could charm just about anyone, which often got them out of tight spots. Jesse admired his brother's daring nature, but deep down, he worried about what it might lead to one day. When the idea for the bank job came up, Jesse hesitated. It felt too risky, but Clay convinced him that it was their ticket to freedom, a chance to escape their lives of struggle and live without fear of tomorrow. With a heavy heart but a strong sense of loyalty, Jesse agreed. They mapped out their plan meticulously, each brother contributing their strengths. It was supposed to be straightforward, in and out without drawing attention, but even then Jesse felt a nagging sense of unease. On the day of the heist, adrenaline coursed through his veins as they executed their plan. Jesse kept his head down and focused on the task at hand, trusting Clay to handle his part. The thrill of it all filled him with purpose, but it quickly turned into horror when everything fell apart. Clay's betrayal hit like a bullet, leaving Jesse standing alone in a cloud of dust and chaos. Now, as he trudged through the desolate landscape with nothing but a busted rifle by his side and a burning desire for revenge in his heart, Jesse felt something shift within him. With each step southward into outlaw country, he knew this journey would lead him to face not just his brother, but also the ghosts of their past. A path lined with blood and betrayal that would redefine who he was destined to become. As Jesse trudged through the dust, memories of his brother Clay flooded his mind. The plan for the bank job had seemed simple enough, yet it felt monumental at the time. Sitting around a flickering campfire one chilly evening, the brothers had laid out their ideas like a map drawn in the dirt. Jesse recalled how Clay's eyes sparkled with excitement as he spoke. "This is our chance, Jess. We can finally leave this life behind." They had spent weeks discussing every detail. Clay boasted about his charm, claiming he could talk their way past anyone, while Jesse focused on the logistics, how to get in and out quickly, where to hide afterward, and what to do if things went sideways. It was a delicate dance of trust, with each brother bringing their strengths to the table. Jesse admired Clay's boldness but also felt a shadow of doubt creeping in. Still, he pushed those feelings aside. They were brothers, after all. Brotherly loyalty ran deep. The day before the heist, they stood outside the bank under the glow of a setting sun. Clay was pacing back and forth, running through their roles one last time. "You take the lookout position and I'll handle the safe," he said confidently. "We'll be in and out like ghosts." Jesse nodded, trusting Clay's instincts even though his heart raced with unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point, a moment that would change everything. When the day arrived, Jesse felt the weight of anticipation pressing down on him. As they approached the bank with their hearts pounding in sync, he glanced at Clay, whose face was masked with determination. They exchanged a brief nod, a silent promise to watch each other's backs. Inside, chaos erupted as they executed their plan flawlessly. Jesse's rifle was ready. He kept his fingers steady as he watched Clay work his magic. But in an instant, everything shattered. The thrill of excitement turned into a nightmare when Clay made his choice, abandoning Jesse in the midst of confusion and gunfire. As Jesse stood alone in that chaotic moment, trusting his brother had been his greatest mistake. Now, with betrayal etched into his heart and vengeance sparking in his soul, he trudged forward into outlaw country, knowing he would confront not just Clay, but also the trust that had once bound them together so tightly. On the day of the bank heist, tension crackled in the air like electricity. Jesse and Clay approached the bank, their hearts pounding in unison. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch ominously ahead of them. Jesse took a deep breath, adjusting his grip on the rifle slung over his shoulder, reminding himself of the roles they'd rehearsed countless times under the stars. As they stepped inside, excitement mixed with fear surged through Jesse's veins. The bank was bustling with townsfolk and chatter filled the air. Clay shot him a glance, his eyes sparkling with the thrill of it all. "Remember, you keep watch at the doors," he whispered urgently, "and I'll work my magic." With a nod, Jesse found his spot just inside the entrance, scanning the room for any signs of trouble while remaining discreet. Clay moved through the crowd with ease, exchanging friendly smiles with customers and greeting the bank tellers like an old friend. Jesse admired his brother's confidence but kept his focus on the task at hand. He watched as Clay glided across the room toward the back where the safe was located. It was time to put their plan into action. Moments felt like hours as beads of sweat trickled down Jesse's neck. He could sense every sound, a coin dropping, a child laughing, and then suddenly, silence fell over the bank like a thick blanket. Jesse's instincts kicked in, something wasn't right. He glanced toward Clay just as their eyes met again. Clay gave him a small nod, reassuring Jesse to hold steady. Then, chaos erupted. The door slammed open behind them as two armed men burst in, yelling for everyone to get down. Panic spread through the room like wildfire. People screamed and scrambled for cover. In that moment of confusion, every second became critical. Jesse acted fast. Adrenaline pushed him forward as he raised his rifle instinctively. "Get down!" he shouted to bystanders while keeping an eye on Clay's hurried movements behind the chaos of overturned chairs and scattered coins. Jesse maintained control even amidst disorder. He expertly scanned for threats while watching his brother's progress. But just as things appeared to be going according to plan, things shifted once more. With a sudden rush of realization, Jesse saw Clay's demeanor change from bravado to something darker. It was as if betrayal was written across his face even before it happened. In one heart-stopping instant, Jesse understood that this job was unraveling before it had barely begun. Panic gripped him tighter than ever as uncertainty reigned over what would come next. The fallout from this day would echo far beyond these walls. The chaos in the bank intensified, and Jesse's heart raced as he shouted for everyone to get down. He scanned the room, adrenaline coursing through his veins while glancing toward Clay. But in that moment of confusion, he noticed something that sent chills down his spine. Clay was no longer moving toward the safe. Instead, he was slipping through the crowd, a glint of gold clutched tightly in his hands. Time seemed to slow as Jesse's eyes widened in disbelief. "Clay!" he shouted, but the sound barely broke through the din of fear and panic. His brother had vanished into a side door, leaving Jesse with nothing but the echo of betrayal ringing in his ears. The realization hit him like a bullet. Clay had taken all the gold for himself and abandoned him to face the wrath of armed men alone. A wave of betrayal washed over Jesse, mixing with confusion and anger. It felt as if the ground beneath him had crumbled away, and he fought to steady himself amidst the turmoil. How could he do this? Jesse thought, grappling with emotions that twisted inside him like a knife. They had been brothers, partners in crime. How could Clay turn against him so easily? Jesse desperately scanned the room for any sign of Clay, but all he could see were terrified faces and people scrambling for safety. The two armed men were shouting now, their threats echoing off the walls as they demanded everyone stay down. In that moment, Jesse felt utterly alone, a sinking feeling settling in his stomach as he realized he was left to fend for himself. With every ounce of focus he could muster, Jesse pushed through the fear gripping him. He raised his rifle once more, knowing he had to protect himself and others trapped in this nightmare. Yet even as he prepared to defend himself against attackers, his mind raced back to memories of shared laughter with Clay, late-night talks by the fire where they dreamt of freedom and riches. But those dreams had turned into a nightmare, trust shattered like fragile glass. As chaos swirled around him, Jesse's resolve hardened. He would survive this day, he had to, and when it was over, he would find Clay. The brother who betrayed him would pay for leaving him behind. There was no escaping that reality. With vengeance igniting within him like an unquenchable fire, Jesse steeled himself for what lay ahead in outlaw country. A journey fueled by betrayal that would not end until he confronted Clay once more. Jesse trudged through the harsh terrain of outlaw country, each step a reminder of his solitude. With only a busted rifle, dwindling supplies, and an all-consuming grudge propelling him forward, he felt the weight of desperation pressing down on him. The sun blazed overhead and the relentless heat shimmered off the ground like a mirage, taunting him with visions of safety and comfort that felt far out of reach. Every rustle in the brush sent his heart racing as he navigated the rugged landscape. He had learned to be resourceful. Survival was not just about strength but also cunning. With little food left in his pack, he relied on his instincts to hunt small game while conserving ammunition. He fashioned traps from twigs and wire he found along the way, setting them up near water sources where animals were likely to pass. Each catch was a small victory against the gnawing hunger that threatened to overwhelm him. But resourcefulness wasn't limited to food. Jesse knew he had to keep his rifle in working order despite its state. He scavenged for parts whenever possible: old farms, abandoned campsites, and even the remnants of other outlaws. Hideouts became temporary stops on his journey. With careful hands, he cleaned and oiled the weapon, ensuring it would fire when needed most. Every click of the trigger echoed in his mind. It was a reminder that he could still defend himself against whatever dangers lurked in this lawless land. As night fell, Jesse found shelter beneath a rocky overhang, grateful for the respite from the biting wind. The stars above twinkled like distant diamonds, but they offered no comfort as memories of Clay flooded back, moments shared under similar skies now tainted by betrayal. Anger bubbled within him like a simmering pot. He could almost feel Clay's presence haunting him in the shadows. The darkness brought its own set of challenges. Jesse often heard distant howls and rustling leaves that hinted at predators nearby. He remained alert and vigilant through those long nights, knowing that one moment of weakness could spell disaster. As he lay against the cool stone, thoughts of vengeance fueled his resolve. Clay would pay for what he had done. With each passing day, Jesse grew more determined to track down his brother. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but there was no turning back now. He would confront Clay face to face. Whether it ended with redemption or revenge remained to be seen, but Jesse knew one thing for certain: he would survive this ordeal and find closure for the betrayal that had changed everything between them. As Jesse pressed onward through the rugged landscape, a new layer of urgency pierced through his thoughts. Lawmen were on the trail. Word of the bank heist had spread like wildfire, and with it came the promise of bounty hunters seeking both him and Clay. Dead or alive, they would say, driven by greed and the thrill of capturing notorious outlaws. For Jesse, it meant that time was running out. He could almost feel their presence lurking behind him like shadows. The distant sound of hooves echoed in his ears, reminding him that he wasn't the only one navigating these treacherous lands. Each rustle in the bushes or snap of a twig heightened his senses, forcing him to remain alert at all times. Jesse knew he had to move quickly. He was a man with unfinished business, but that business was now tangled with the law. The need to find Clay quickly became mixed with the instinct for self-preservation. He understood that if he didn't act fast, they might both end up in chains, or worse. With every step, he mentally plotted his course through outlaw country, avoiding known trails that could easily lead to traps set by vigilant bounty hunters. He took detours through narrow paths where trees grew thick and shadows cloaked every movement. Days blurred into nights as Jesse relied on his instincts to stay one step ahead. He scavenged for food and water while scoping out potential hiding spots from prying eyes. During one tense afternoon, he stumbled upon a campfire still smoldering, a telltale sign that others had recently passed through. The scent of smoke hung heavy in the air, and Jesse's heart raced as he instinctively ducked behind a bush, listening intently for voices. "They'll be down this way soon," a gruff voice said from the distance. "This is where they last spotted Paxton." Jesse's blood ran cold. They were closer than he had thought. Crouched low, he felt invigorated by fear but also fueled by anger. They were hunting him down as if he were prey. Something inside him snapped at that thought. He wouldn't be their victim, not now. As night fell again, casting deep shadows over the landscape, Jesse lay awake beneath a canopy of stars, determination etched across his face. He would confront Clay, and if the law stood in his way, they would learn just how far he was willing to go to bring his brother back. The thrill of vengeance burned brightly within him. No matter who pursued him or what dangers lay ahead, nothing would deter him from this mission of retribution. As Jesse forged deeper into the heart of outlaw country, he found himself wrestling with an internal storm that raged inside him. Each step he took was weighed down by conflicting emotions. Anger and hurt pulsed through his veins, forcing him to question the very nature of his mission. Was it revenge he sought for Clay's betrayal, or did he still hold a flicker of hope to bring his brother back alive? With each memory that crossed his mind, a shared laugh by the campfire, whispered dreams of freedom under the stars, Jesse felt a tug at his heart. Those moments were now marred by betrayal, yet they reminded him of the bond they had as brothers. He recalled how Clay had always been adventurous, lured by the promise of excitement and risk, while Jesse preferred caution and planning. They were two sides of the same coin, and now that coin seemed to be rolling endlessly away from him. As he took shelter against a rocky outcrop one restless night, Jesse gazed at the flickering stars above, their light offering little comfort in his turmoil. "How could you do this to me, Clay?" he whispered into the darkness, as if hoping for an answer from the void. Each word echoed back with stark clarity. It was not just about the gold, but about trust, a trust that had been shattered in an instant. The thought of vengeance sent a rush of adrenaline through him. The image of confronting Clay danced in his mind like a mirage on the horizon. Would it be a reunion or a reckoning? Jesse felt his fists clench tightly. Part of him yearned for closure, a chance to confront Clay not just for the betrayal but for all those moments lost between them. But another part hesitated, searching for a glimmer of compassion and understanding in a situation that had spiraled so far out of control. The distance between them seemed insurmountable at times, both physically and emotionally. As he laid back against the cold stone, wondering what lay ahead, Jesse knew he needed to make a decision. Could he forgive Clay, or would he let anger consume him completely? The law may have placed a bounty on both their heads, but his greatest battle lay within himself. Determined not to become a prisoner of his own emotions, Jesse resolved to seek answers once he found Clay. Whether their encounter would result in reconciliation or confrontation remained uncertain. What mattered was that he had to face this conflict head-on. Only then could he determine whether vengeance or redemption was truly what he sought on this tumultuous journey. As Jesse continued his treacherous journey through outlaw country, he encountered a variety of characters that illustrated the harsh realities of this unforgiving land. Each interaction became a lesson in survival, adding depth to his resolve and shaping his outlook on life. One evening he came across a ramshackle saloon, its weathered sign creaking in the wind. The raucous laughter spilling from inside drew him in, seeking temporary refuge from the dusty roads. Inside, he found a group of outlaws boasting loudly about their latest exploits. Jesse listened closely, absorbing their stories, sensing the swagger that came with a life devoid of rules and remorse. But one man, an older outlaw with a scar across his cheek, caught his attention. He was different from the others, his eyes held a glimmer of wisdom amidst the bravado. Jesse approached him cautiously. "What's it really like out here?" he asked. "It's a hard life, kid," the man replied, taking a swig of whiskey. "Trust no one and keep your gun close, everyone's out for themselves." His words resonated with Jesse, who felt the weight of that truth especially keenly since Clay's betrayal. Later, as Jesse left the saloon, he passed by a camp where a mother was trying to soothe her crying child. The scene struck him deeply. Beneath the rough exterior of outlaw life lay families struggling for survival just like him. He thought of his own family and the warmth that had been replaced with the coldness of betrayal. In that moment, he realized that revenge would only deepen the cycle of pain. Perhaps there was another way forward. Continuing on, he stumbled upon a group of bounty hunters camped near a riverbank. Their conversation was filled with talk of rewards and the thrill of the chase. As he eavesdropped on their plans to capture both him and Clay, Jesse felt anger flare within him, but also something else, a budding understanding that violence begets more violence. He knew he could either be just another name on their list or break free from that fate. With each encounter, Jesse's internal conflict grew stronger. The harsh truths about life in outlaw country drove home the realization that vengeance could lead him down a dark path he might not return from. He had to decide if he would let anger consume him, or if he could summon the strength to seek something different, a path toward understanding and redemption while still holding on to his desire to confront Clay. As night fell and with these thoughts swirling in his mind, Jesse pressed on through the darkness, more determined than ever to navigate not just the dangers ahead, but also the tangled web of emotions within himself. As Jesse pressed forward, signs of Clay's presence became increasingly evident. The whispers in the wind, the faint scent of smoke from distant campfires, and the footprints left in the dust all painted a clearer picture of his brother's path. Jesse's heart raced with anticipation as he felt the tension building, knowing that he was closing in on the one person who had betrayed him. He approached a small settlement nestled between towering cliffs and thick brush. The atmosphere was thick with tension and mistrust, residents eyeing him warily as he passed through. Yet what caught his interest was a gathering outside a modest tavern where a group of rough-looking men exchanged hurried words. Jesse caught fragments of their conversation. They spoke of a bounty. Clay's name surfaced with promise and warning. For a moment, everything else faded away as Jesse listened closer. "He's been hiding out near the old mine," one man said, scratching at his stubbled chin. "Rumor has it he's got a stash of gold with him." The mention of gold ignited a flicker of rage within Jesse but also solidified his focus. Now he had a destination. With renewed determination, Jesse set out toward the old mine, navigating through rocky paths shaded by towering pines. Each step brought him closer to Clay and to the confrontation he had anticipated for so long. Yet along with that excitement came nagging doubts. Would he be able to confront his brother face to face without letting anger take over? The landscape changed as he neared the mine. Jagged rocks jutted from the earth like teeth waiting to bite. The air grew cooler, carried by a breeze that rustled leaves overhead, creating an eerie soundtrack for Jesse's approach. He felt the weight of inevitability pressing down upon him. This was the point of no return. As he neared the entrance to the mine, shadows danced unsettlingly at the edges of his vision. He could hear hushed voices, a mixture of laughter and tension, and his senses heightened, sharpening every sound around him. Was it Clay's voice among them? The thought sent adrenaline rushing through him. Jesse paused just outside the entrance, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He reached for his rifle, feeling its familiar weight in his hands as he prepared for what lay ahead. This moment would shape their future. Would they reconcile, or would vengeance consume them both? With resolve hardening his heart, Jesse stepped into the dimly lit mine's mouth, ready to confront not just Clay but also the ghosts of their shared past. The climax of his journey loomed before him like an unyielding wall. Soon he would know whether they could rebuild their bond or if all that remained was destruction. Stepping cautiously into the dimly lit entrance of the mine, a sense of foreboding filled Jesse. Shadows danced along the jagged walls, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. He could hear muffled voices deeper within, and his heart raced as he prepared for the confrontation he had anticipated for so long. This was it, the moment of truth between him and Clay. As Jesse maneuvered through the narrow passage, memories flooded his mind, their childhood adventures, shared laughter, and dreams dashed by betrayal. Each step echoed with the weight of those memories, urging him to keep going while simultaneously pulling him back. He clenched his rifle tighter, feeling both anticipation and dread. Then he saw him. Clay stood at the far end of the tunnel, outlined in the faint light that filtered through a crack in the rocks. Jesse's breath caught in his throat as he took in his brother's disheveled appearance, the same boyish charm now marred by dirt and weariness. A mix of relief and fury surged within him. "Clay," Jesse called out, his voice echoing ominously in the confined space. Clay turned slowly, surprise flickering across his face before it hardened into a guarded expression. "Jesse," he replied, his tone equal parts wary and defensive. "I figured you'd come for me." "You left me to die," Jesse shouted, anger boiling over. "You took everything we worked for." The confrontation drew closer as both brothers stood locked in a battle of wills, years of history compressing around them like the mine itself. Clay stepped forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "I did what I had to do to survive." "Survive at what cost?" Jesse interrupted, feeling fury and betrayal coursing through his veins. "We were supposed to be in this together." The two stood toe-to-toe, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jesse's heart raced as he battled with conflicting emotions. Part of him wanted to pull the trigger to make Clay pay for his actions. Another part longed for reconciliation despite everything that had happened. "What was it all for?" Jesse asked quietly, desperation creeping into his voice. "Did you think you could just walk away?" Clay paused, vulnerability creeping into his hardened expression as he seemed to search for the right words. "I didn't know what else to do. I felt trapped, he admitted, anguish flickering in his eyes. In that moment, Jesse felt something shift within him, a glimmer of understanding but still overshadowed by hurt. This confrontation was more than just vengeance, it was a reckoning of their bond and broken trust. Would he condemn Clay for his choices or try to salvage whatever remained of their relationship? As emotions swirled between them like dust in the air, Jesse realized this choice would define not only their futures, but also who he was becoming. A brother torn between love and betrayal, standing on a precipice where one decision could change everything forever. In the aftermath of their confrontation deep within the mine, Jesse stood in silence, emotions swirling around him like the dust motes caught in fragmented light. The weight of words exchanged hung in the air, and he could hardly process everything that had just transpired. He looked at Clay, whose weary expression mirrored his own tumultuous feelings, confusion mixed with regret. "I never wanted this, Jesse," Clay said softly, his voice cracking. "I was scared. I thought I could save us both." Jesse's heart ached at those words. A part of him yearned to forgive, to understand the desperation that drove Clay to betray him. But another part clung tightly to the anger and hurt, the raw wounds still fresh and unhealed. "Why didn't you come back for me?" Jesse asked, his voice barely above a whisper, betraying the vulnerability he felt inside. Clay looked away, shame flickering across his face. "I didn't know how. I thought about it every day, but it felt too late." As Jesse processed this moment, realization began to dawn on him. Holding onto rage and resentment would only lead to destruction, not just of their relationship, but also of his own spirit. He reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point, the lessons learned and the internal battles fought. Life was far too short to let betrayal define him. "Maybe we can try to move forward," Jesse finally said, a mixture of hope and uncertainty rising within him. "But it's going to take time." Clay nodded slowly, the flicker of relief in his eyes bringing a soft smile to Jesse's face. Although there was much damage to repair, the mere possibility of mending their bond felt like a weight lifted from his shoulders. As they stepped out into the fresh air, Jesse took a deep breath, feeling lighter than he had in days. The sun shone down on them as they emerged from the darkness of the mine, illuminating a path ahead, one strewn with uncertainty but also with opportunity for healing. Jesse knew he would need to tread carefully. Rebuilding trust wouldn't happen overnight, but they could confront the world together, supporting one another in ways they hadn't before. They could be brothers again. The law was still on their trail. They couldn't relax just yet. But for the first time since that fateful day of betrayal, Jesse felt a flicker of hope in his heart. He would no longer allow anger to be his driving force. Instead, he would seek redemption, not just for himself, but for Clay too. As they set off together into outlaw country once more, Jesse felt resolute, ready to navigate whatever challenges lay ahead as allies rather than adversaries. Two brothers bound by blood, confronting a world that had tried to tear them apart, but ultimately giving them a chance to rebuild what was lost.